I'm Caroline Hroncich, Careers Editor at Insider, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's panel on global recruiting. Today, we'll be speaking with two talent acquisition leaders about how they're reinventing their recruiting strategies to achieve their hiring goals. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce our speakers. First, we have Cher Sim, Vice President of Global Talent Acquisition for Mobility and Immigration at Micron, and Doug Goodge, the Acting Global Head of Talent Acquisition at Ericsson. Thank you both for being with us here today. To get started, can you both define at a high level what candidates you're looking for and what hiring top talent means for you? Sherwee, would you like to get us started?
Thank you so much, Caroline. Yes, I'd love to share that. I think in Micron's success definitely is determined in our ability to attract, engage, and acquiring top diverse talent that living the Micron's core value and enabling Micron's vision, missions, and strategic objective. In additional to the industry relevant skill and knowledge set, we seek for talent who had what we call the value fit, which consists of our people, our innovations, tenacity, collaboration, and customer focus. Attributes such as problem solver, adaptability, and ownership. And best talent is someone with the core value fit and a culture add to the organization. And of course, it's always important for us to look beyond what the talent could do today, but also their potential in terms of contributing to the future of the organization.
Great. Thanks, Sherwee. Doug, what about you? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I would echo what Sherwee said there. I completely agree. In terms of fundamental things that we look for with regards to our top talent is, number one, the actual fit, the potential, the alignment with our culture and values is so key. And also, you know, our industry is moving so quickly. It's such a dynamic area. So the adaptability, that desire, the curiosity, the want to keep learning and upskilling and reskilling and developing is really important for us too. So that, you know, in terms of what we look for, I think they're the fundamental components.
Great. Thank you both. So I'd love to give our audience a sense of scale that we're talking about today. So roughly how many positions will your company be hiring for over the next 12 months? And can you also share the types of countries and the languages you'd cover? Doug, I'll toss it back to you to start.
So we have an employee base of just over 100,000 worldwide, and we are looking to hire about 22,000 this year. And out of those 22,000, we are hiring 2/3 externally, and the other third will be internal moves. And I think it's important to actually talk about the internal movement here, which is fundamentally and really, really important part of our overall kind of talent acquisition journey as well. But we may come back to that a bit later. From a geographical perspective, we operate in pretty much every country in the world. But to give you an example, last year, we hired employees in 118 countries.
Sherwee, what about you?
Well, for Microns, in the next 12 months, we're looking at hiring about 6,000 to 8,000 positions in 17 countries that Microns is operating in. And if you look at that, that represents close to about our workforce of 44,000 employees. And similarly to what Goodge have shared, when we look at our hiring, we definitely want to encourage our internal talent mobility and also externally. And for us, our ratio is about 80-20 from external to internal. I would say that there are, you know, a couple of challenges when we look at our next 12 months roadmap, which includes, you know, 3 areas. Number one, we saw that in the last 1 year, there is increasing number of new skills that we're looking at. So easily about 20% of these positions will be areas and skill set that we might not have ever hired before, and we're starting to look at it both internally and externally. And also our desire to continue expand our diversity of hiring. And definitely, we are also very well aware with the exponential expansions of in the tech industry, especially semiconductor, a very steep competition. And of course, for the talent acquisition team, we want to be able to find a key, to and the strategy to unlock the potentials to winning this talent war.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is there's clearly a large need for talent right now, hiring for a lot of different roles, both internally and externally. So Doug, I'm curious, how do you develop a strategy to fill this need and to also get buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great question, Caroline. As Cher has said, the movement in the industry is so fast. We're moving very quickly, hugely dynamic. The competitor landscape is massive, and there is that real demand for the top talent by so many other companies. And so, we need to actually get a strategy in place that makes sure that we can have that end-to-end workflow really clear, and it's really clear in terms of roles, responsibilities. So, starting actually from the strategic side is making sure that there's absolutely real clear alignment from our group, our team, in terms of what the business strategy looks like, not only this year, but next year and the year after. So getting that strategy is really important, and having that context. Once we've got that context, then again, it's about finding as many facts and data points as possible. And that's feedback from the business, feedback from the executives, in terms of how the current process is working, where the gaps are. And likewise, that's filtering down the organization from the hiring managers to our people leaders, our people LT. So, it's really important to actually get the clarity and all the facts we possibly can to make sure that we can then define the to-be situation. What do we need the strategy to look like? And once we've got that in place, then it really is making sure that the gaps between what we've got and what we need is really clear, and breaking that part down, the gaps part down, into the various components. And again, it's almost segmenting. It's like peeling the onion, if you like, Caroline. And once we can do that really clearly, then we can actually build the plans against each of those particular components. But from the strategic side, once we've got the clarity in terms of the business, where the skills demand is going, then we can actually build the component parts on the workflow, starting, of course, with the branding and the talent attraction, to then how we're going out, how we're connecting with the different talent segments that we're after, how we're bringing them in, engaging them, and how we can make sure the whole process with regards to the evaluation, the selection, the assessment is as effective and efficient as possible, to make sure, of course, there's a great experience for the candidates, but also the hiring manager too. So that's a really important component to this process in defining the strategy. And then, of course, once we've highlighted the relevant talent that we want to bring in, making sure the pre-boarding, offer process and onboarding process is really clear too. So, they're the components in terms of defining the strategy, but a big part is actually the feedback loop. So it's not a kind of like looking at the strategy, defining it, and that's a one-off. It's a case of making sure that feedback loop is really clear in all those components, making sure that we're getting constant feedback, and then we can iterate what we're doing on a continuous basis. So again, that's really key for us.
Some really great points there, Doug. Cher, how do you work with other leaders in the business to make changes in how recruiting is done?
Wow, that's really a great question, because at the end of the day, until we meet the business need, it's really doesn't matter in terms of how we go about acquiring the top talent. So for us, when we look at our strategic pillars of excellency, in terms of driving the how strategy, we look at the strategic partnership with our customer, including our business leader, our candidate, and our stakeholder, are definitely delivering the best-in-class solution and exceptional experience, and also our high-performance global talent acquisitions and mobility organization. As a strategic partner to our business leader, we identify our global talent acquisitions partner role who listen so that we understand the business and the talent needs to develop the solution for our organization. So for example, we have our director of the North America and EMEA regions as leading the region's talent market and solution. She is also the talent acquisition partner to our technology and product group globally. So with that relationship with the business leader, understanding where the business are heading, what are their priority, she will then facilitate the strategic recruiting team with makeup of all the recruiters that is responsible for this business segment globally, where she will then bring the business priority and also understand what are the different talents strategy in each of the location, so that they can synergize, they can look at opportunity to partner, and also help to prioritize in terms of what our business needs and also the solution. And at the same time, what we constantly learn is the balancing between the global and the local perspective, especially leading the world of Growcom, where we need to really operate well in a highly matrix and network structure. We want to be able to speak the language of the global technology, the global and local business and operating model, and also the global and local talent market. So we need to be consistent in terms of consistently ask ourselves what's next, so that we can partner our business leader in our visions of talent without border. And this is how we will be able to build trust with the business leader, because at times when we are really facing the challenge and the talent war, a lot of these iterations, which I think earlier on the share about the closed loop, the feedback loop, the learning loop, which will help to enhance, in terms of really understanding what is needed in terms of the talent profile and what is needed to really make it tick in terms of the contribution in the company too.
Cher, you said something interesting about technology, and I'd love to ask you, how can a large global organization use technology to attract and hire really top talent?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, we constantly ask what's next, because it's important that we demand for action. And really, before we address technology, I think in terms of pushing boundary, we really have to focus on first your ability to imagine, and also the mindset before we start looking at technology piece. And of course, when we talk about imaginations today, when you look at a talent pool, if you just narrowly focus in terms of engineering and look at only the engineering students or the engineering talent, you're going to find really limited pool. Therefore, you have to expand to beyond just engineering to the STEM, talent. And that's how we were able to really drive in terms of this talent into the engineering role. And also at the same time to really drive the diversity, because when you look for engineers, there are just very few women. However, when you expand the talent pool, you will have a much bigger pool to actually select from. And we learned that once when this STEM talent have the related experience, and also what is really important is that they're hungry, they're curious, the growth mindset and tenacity. So once when you are able to broaden your imagination where to look for the talent, next in terms of the mindset is really addressing some biases in the hiring managers in our hiring process, and in a way that we want to ensure that whatever technology that we select, it will help us to not necessarily eliminate the biases, but create the awareness that we do have biases in our process, and ensure that we actually have the awareness as early as possible. And then once when you look at these two pieces of it, now we're ready to bring to the table in terms of the technology. We have implemented a couple of TA technology that help us to address both aspects of the hiring process from the company and also from the candidates. One of the tools that we have is to help us to really write a gender neutral job description. And the other tools that allow us to run very targeted campaign, including anonymized resume, because sometimes it can limit unconscious bias during shortlisting. We know a photo, a name, an interest, and even an address could indicate a social economics background or even gender. And we know that for women, actually most of the time, we need to be very 100% sure before we put in an application. And an AI system that will take this resume and the interest that's expressed by the candidates, and then feedback what other jobs that are and roles that they can consider in the company. And this nudging actually help a lot to expand the women applicants pool. So I think to wrap up what we think is really important before the technology is really to help expand the imagination, help to understand what are the biases that we're trying to address. And then with that incorporate into the technology, and that's how we can be successful.
Thank you, Sherry. Particularly interesting, your comments about using technology to root out bias. I think that's so important. This next question I'd like to ask Doug, over the last 12 to 14 months, we've seen a lot of changes, mostly because of the global pandemic that's been going on. And that's obviously had a pretty major impact on recruiting and talent acquisition in general. So I'm curious, what extra considerations have you taken because of the pandemic?
Yeah, Caroline, it's again, we've all experienced such a massive kind of change and upheaval over the last 18 months or so. And taking a step back, fundamentally, the number one consideration is of course the well-being of everybody, with the well-being of our employees. And so overnight we almost shifted 85,000 people to work from home, and that was quite a move in its own right. And of course we're talking about connectivity here, and we were pleased, as actually most companies were able to do, is pivot very fast and actually transition a lot of the processes from an office environment to the home environment. And again, it's testament to how good the connectivity, I think, is overall. And of course, it's affected all processes. And actually, I think it's talking of mind shifts and mind changes. I think actually we've been able to push a lot of processes back to driving it from a home environment. And we didn't actually think it'd be possible, but we've seen it, and we've been able to do it. And of course, talent acquisition is one of those processes. So, with regards to talent acquisition, of course, we've been talking about the tools, and by having the right tools, of course, it makes things a lot easier. But what we need to do is we've needed to ensure that, number one, our recruitment teams have been able to perform what they need to be able to do from a home environment, and again, links back to the connectivity. So to ensure that they've got the tools in place, then we need to make sure that we go through the process, and we make sure that actually we are running the process again effectively and efficiently from the home environment. But what we've needed to do, depending on the location and depending on the setup according to the countries that we're operating in, we've needed to adjust the processes at certain stages of the actual recruitment cycle. So in some areas, for example, face-to-face interviews in the office next to each other is just not possible. So again, we've had to coach and educate our hiring managers to actually incorporate and change and be flexible in terms of making sure that they can run the assessment process online, which again is very easy, bearing in mind the environments that we've got with the likes of Zoom and Teams and so forth. But then also we're looking at the online assessment tools that we're using too, and being able to make sure that we can again set up a really clear process where we can operate that from the home environment. And then we come down to the offer process too. So that is another important key part in terms of making sure that if we still have had some kind of older processes whereby they're paper-based, we've had to change very quickly to make sure that they're now online and we can drive as much as possible from an online basis. But it's not just actually pushing the process through until the offer. It's the other considerations are making sure that we can adjust quickly the logistics. So it's simple things about how can we make sure that there's a really effective process whereby once we've identified and we've offered and the offer's been accepted, that we can then drive the onboarding process, link link our talent up with potentially buddies at an earlier stage, so that there's that connection there, to ensure that that engagement that's been driven through the initial stages of the process remains and is consistent through to the onboarding process, making sure that we've got a really effective process that ensures that our new hires have their equipment on day one and they're ready to go, and making sure all of the onboarding learning is there and structured and very easy to use. So again, it's the coming back to the experience and the people experience that we talked about before. It's making those adjustments that we've had to make very quickly to ensure that, again, we can be really efficient, and we can still make sure that we can push and drive the process to the outcomes that we need very, very quickly. So that's been important. And then the other consideration, I think, is that we've seen, certainly now with us in the global companies, there's been other adaptations from our own mindset, I guess, in terms of actually, before we were thinking, well, roles have to be in a certain location. That's the kind of a traditional way of thinking. But now one of the learns that we've had is that, well, clearly we've seen that they don't have to be in certain locations because we've all been working from home. So that has brought another degree of flexibility into the way we're thinking and the way the business is thinking on location. And then that has implications in terms of the talent pools and how we can use data to look at the skills we want and look at potentially where we then go out and attract, whether it be on a more global basis, whether it be on a more regional basis. But that flexibility there is also a really interesting development that actually we've seen as a result of the last 18 months.
Thanks, Doug. Cher, when you're hiring, one of the most important things to consider is diversity, and especially in a global organization. I'm curious, when you're making hiring decisions, how do you make sure that you are hiring a diverse workforce and that you are making that a big consideration for your teams?
Right. Yeah, I think when we look at diversity, definitely at two levels. I mean, we are a global company. Our customers are global, our suppliers are global, our team members are global. And definitely talking about diversity, equality, and inclusion openly is the only way that we can get the strength out of it. So when we look at this whole diversity, we have a very, we talk to the leaders in terms of what are the changes that we need in the organizations to really prepare our readiness, to really look at the diversity talent. And first thing first, we want to be able to align globally. How do we define diversity? And we recognize there's literally like two levels when we talk about diversity. And of course, we are all very familiar when we say diversity includes categories, but probably not limiting to gender, people with disability, the ethnicity, international foreign students in a country, and also veterans. So I think that alignment is really important, because then that allows us to really recognize that we need a multi-tier strategy and solution that will serve the global and the local level differently. And one of the things we also partner the DI really closely is one of the solutions is really engaging our employee resource group in Micron, which today we have 9 ERG with over 70 chapters. And this group actually provide a way for the team members to live our value, especially in very challenging times that Doug have outlined earlier. And in fact, one of our very bold commitment is to hire people with disability. So we actually witness our capable ERG and the TA team literally auditing the site readiness, improvise our workplace and policy, and also partner with agency and government body to train our hiring managers and team members so that we can support and interact with people with physical disability in this case. And we literally have to come together to contribute and create a sense of belonging meaningfully. And of course, this is at one level. We also recognize when we look at diversity, what is also the strength is the perspective, the ideas, and the solution. And our Executive Vice President of Global Operations, Manish Bhatia, always say, our visions of DEI is where we recognize best talent, best ideas, and the best ideas win. So we can imagine we literally have to go at a global level and also by country to really engage the team so that we and the business to really understand why do we do diversity? How will we be able to really strengthen our overall capability and drive and fuse the innovations by our diversity, and then really laser focus in the partnership internally and externally through our whole hiring engagement, and that's how we see that can happen. And of course, I think as I mentioned earlier on, once when you clarify what is really important, then you bring that piece of technology to really support you and bring alive the visions and of how you really drive about diversity of hiring.
Thank you so much. Doug, what other important considerations are there in delivering a transformation of policy and technology globally?
I think that it's an enormously complex exercise in transforming and driving change, depending on, of course, the technology and the policy change you're doing. But I think the actual ability to have a really clear, structured change management program is key, and that starts with actually making sure that you're engaging and bringing the key stakeholders with you on the journey from day one. And what that means is not only making sure that you're really clear in terms of the pain points and what pain points you're trying to address and will address, but then you're gaining their input in terms of their views, their ideas, in terms of that initial kind of analysis. Now, once the program framework has been set up, it's then a case of making sure that, again, we've talked about it several times already, you've got a really good communication alignment with the stakeholders, both from a kind of from our side, certainly from the headquarters, but also then on the local perspective, working really, really closely and adapting the relevant change in comms management according to the actual area that we're deploying to. So that's been a really important part of the process that we're going through. Not only that, it's a case of we need to make sure that we can get the data points in really fast in terms of seeing how we are developing the actual program, so we can analyze the data points to see how successful we're being in some areas, or if we need to iterate and change, and we kind of learn quickly in the areas that aren't going as well as we want to, so we can change and make them better for the kind of next deployment. So again, mixing those areas is really important, and it comes back down to, from our perspective, again, that clear structure, that really clear ability to bring the stakeholders, the right stakeholders, with us on the journey. Simple things like making sure that we're setting up the right reference groups and the steering groups, and we've got that cadence set up, and then we can actually communicate that output again through to the relevant other stakeholders that we need to make sure that, again, we're reiterating and emphasizing what the pain points are that we're trying to address, what the solution is, the benefits of that, and of course the actual objective and what we'll see once we've actually delivered that transformation, once we've delivered the technology that we want to. And of course, we are by nature a digital organization. We're driving change. That's what we are giving to our customers in terms of driving the 5G and the connectivity. So actually, from a cultural perspective and a communication perspective, we need to make sure that what we're doing internally and the communication messages matches actually what we're doing externally too. So there is, again, that connection in terms of what we are doing centrally as an organization and what we're giving our main customers, such as the likes of AT&T and Verizon, T-Mobile, and so forth. So that's another important factor. But again, I mean, Cher, we mentioned it earlier, is that actually you can't underestimate the ability of listening hard, listening carefully, making sure that you're collaborating really well, making sure that you're creating an environment which is executing quickly, but it also enables people to feel comfortable to speak up and input, because we need that mix to make sure that we can iterate where necessary, and we can continue and make sure kind of milestones and deadlines are hit.
Great, thanks, Doug. Well, we have a few minutes left, so with that time, I'd love to pose the question to both of you. What other advice would you give to your peers listening on this topic of global recruiting? Doug, I'll toss it back to you.
The advice in terms of global recruiting, I think, well, firstly, we've got to have a clear vision. We've got to have a clear vision, and the clear vision comes as strategy. So again, from our perspective, it's been so important in looking at where the organization is going, where are our customers going, what are our customers' demands on us going to be, therefore how does our portfolio need to change, and therefore a case of, right, so the reskilling, upskilling, what can we build, what can we buy, and again, it's building that strategy from that point. And I mean, what we're seeing here is, of course, I'm heading up the talent acquisition function, but with things like this, there's such a great degree of integration between our talent management, our learning and development organizations as well. So that alignment there is super critical. And again, it comes back to the earlier point that we were talking about, that collaboration and making sure that we're listening to our stakeholders, we're listening to our peers, and making sure that we're clear in terms of the communication. And I mean, I've always had that principle is that we treat everybody as a kind of that one team philosophy. So it doesn't matter that for example, I'm in talent acquisition, and we have other units, L&D, business units, but from our perspective, we're all one team, and we want the same goal. And actually, to have that philosophy and that mindset, and keep reiterating that mindset, and again linking it with the vision, is really, really important. And I think that the other part I'll leave you with is of course the importance of data, the importance of facts. So once we're setting off on that journey in terms of transforming or changing, we've got to have that systematic approach to making sure that we're getting and we really are having quality data and that ability to actually analyze that data on a continuous basis, making those inferences, and being really agile in terms of how we can then modify what we're doing and pivoting if necessary, is super key too. So again, that links back to the mindset. So they're my key pointers, Karen.
Great. What about you, Sherry?
Yeah, I think I will make two offers to the here. First, I'm just thinking that imagine when you are in crisis. We all learn when on a plane, when in crisis, you literally must put on your oxygen mask first, before you turn over to help others. And I think sometimes when we're in the talent acquisitions organizations or people organizations, our priority is always about helping the business, helping the other organizations, and we take care of ourselves last. It's always the lowest priority. And I like to pivot it and turn it upside down, is that we need to invest in our global talent acquisitions organization structure, capability, resource, and technology. I will say that I just in the journey of what we call about our organization 3.0. In fact, we went on a global listening tour with our business leaders and our global talent acquisitions and mobility team members, and be very honest with the gaps that we have, and also where are the opportunity to invest. In fact, we identified with what Doug earlier on mentioned. There's so much, we need to continue to evolve in terms of building our new capability. And we recognize that, our ability to actually build the talent intelligent research role, which we never invest too much in, but now we have to expand that team. Similarly, leadership bench strengths are critical because in terms of the complexity of the business, and also invest on roles such as talent, brand, and innovations role, technology role. And also our recruiter are transforming to be a talent advisor in order to be a strategic partner to the business. So indeed, we leverage on Gartner's research on 8 essential skills of a talent advisor role, such as candidates, career coach, and hiring managers influencer, just to name 2. So after you invest, the other advice is, when we talk about digital transformation, the tenacity in a digital transformation change journey is also really critical. I think, of course, in Microns, we consistently develop and implement innovative HR solution so that can leapfrog our capability with advanced technology. And this actually have allowed us to transform our recruiting process and how we market our talent. And as we implement all the solutions globally, one of the very significant learning is to get our team members to make very conscious decisions to so-called break the old habits and adapt the new way and the best practice. And we recognize this is independent on your seniority, your background, or your experience. It's a global, universal challenge. So even team members who are involved in a very early stage of the change, sometimes it's difficult to actually let go of the current practice. So it is critical to have a group of early adopters and champions who believe in this vision, relentlessly explore different engagement models to increase the desire and confidence to learn, unlearn, relearn the new technology, the new tool. So I want to congratulate all the talent acquisition professionals as we continue to push the boundary, open opportunity, and also inspire actions to build a more inclusive community that provide career opportunity for all. So really go global talent acquisitions professional.
Well, thank you both so much for being with us today. I think this was a really, really great conversation. I've certainly learned a lot about this incredibly important topic. So really appreciate both of your time. And a huge thank you to our audience for listening. I hope you found this really insightful and interesting. And have a great rest of your day.